The Fabio Carvalho situation is one which I think has, definitely upset some Liverpool fans, but also made some other Liverpool fans realise what it is that has to go on at a club. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that this morning or this afternoon, whenever you're watching it. Welcome back to Laurence McKenna on LFC channel. Liverpool Football Club has gone under a couple of different manager styles in previous seasons. Before, there was obviously this idea that we would sign players based on scouting, and then those players would come good in some ways, and sometimes we'd take them through the academy, those kind of things. Then we went a lot more data-based under Michael Edwards, and that was mixed with, I've seen an interview recently where they were speaking about the issues they have between Brendan Rodgers and this transfer committee, which every club has a transfer committee. It's called the group of people that go out there and do scouting, but it became a bit of a press thing where it was used as a bit of a stick to beat Liverpool. Anyway, that was Michael Edwards and all those guys. Those people all worked out exceptionally well, probably partially because they were well scouted, but also because Michael Edwards had given and done the hard yards for the manager a long time before he needed to worry about them being good or bad on the pitch, right? We knew that a lot of these players were going to be good players for Liverpool because they statistically and personality-wise fit what Liverpool wanted. Now, then they moved on away from Edwards as Edwards left the club, but there was still some data, and very often, as long as the data matched with what Klopp and Pep Linders wanted, they would go out there and get the player. A couple of times there was a hit, a couple of times there were slight misses or things which we're not quite sure is a miss or a hit yet, i.e. Darwin Núñez. Then there are players that kind of fall in between those two areas, right? There are players who want immediate first-team football and have career progression ideas, but the team is just so stacked ahead of them. That might be, say, a Bobby Clark, who is currently, apparently, on his way to RB, based on, whether they can agree terms or not. Ahead of him in the team, potentially, was Jones, Gravenberch, potentially Szoboszlai, though I think Szoboszlai is slightly more attacking, Endo, McAllister, there are a number, you can keep going with that. Bajcetic. You don't even have to worry about those players being dethroned, should we say. Some of them potentially have got good transfer, should we say, value. Others have decent experience enough in the team that they, like an Endo or someone like that, to the point where they'll be a leader and play their part. And others within the team are still finding their position and being coached up. After watching the performance of someone like Wataru Endo against Las Palmas, it worries me a little less when players who we're worried about within the squad because we haven't changed them since the Klopp era, which was now 3 months ago, are being coached and are changing their game very visibly or moving their game around very visibly for Arne Slot. I think Endo is actually slightly more attacking in the Bundesliga, but I'm interested to know what you guys think. He dropped deep, he could attack. There were lots of different aspects to a game. It's partly why Liverpool signed him in the first place, the adaptability of that midfielder. His smarts, his age, his reading of the game, all those kind of things. Things that young players sometimes have, but very rarely have. Then you've got people like Harvey Elliott, Trainioni, just ahead of that, Dominic Szoboszlai. Young players who are coming through and clearly want a chance within the team, clearly deserve a chance within the team, and are the future of the club. Players who you can see playing there for a very long time. And if they don't want to play there, if they don't want to wait for their space in the team, it seems as if Liverpool's transfer policy is, if you don't want to be here, then you should move on. And Fabio Carvalho, I think, is a great example of that. Now, that also the same may apply to someone like Ben Doak. I think Ben Doak is a really great prospect. Ideally, we would loan him out. But you can only have a squad that's so big. And I get, a lot of people are criticising Chelsea right now. I think the Chelsea thing is like a whole other example of what you would do it's a whole other model of what they're trying to do. They're trying to buy relatively modestly priced players on their scale and sell them for 60 plus million. Cool. Do that however you want to do it. That works, right? Or it may not work. That's not what Liverpool are trying to do. And it means that at some points Liverpool have to clear house. It doesn't mean that Fabio Carvalho is a bad player. It doesn't mean that Bobby Clark is a bad player. Players moving on in the past meant you are bad, you are not good enough for this team. Now what it means is we see value in you, we see value elsewhere in the team. And the Zubimendi and Carvalho ends of the spectrum are two different ends, right? Before, I don't know that many people that would have profiled Zubimendi at the very top of Liverpool's wants and needs within the squad. Of course, I think there are going to be some people out there who would have said, oh, absolutely, we need a player like Zubimendi. I don't think many people would have turned the Zubimendi transfer down, but that's not the point. You probably could have looked at that line of players and gone, McAllister, Jones, Szoboszlai, Endo, Gravenberch, right, what do we need in there? I'm not sure Zubimendi would have been your first. I think a lot of people would have picked a destroyer. But ever since we've gone to sign Zubimendi, I now see a Zubimendi, and it's probably a mental thing, see a Zubimendi-shaped hole within the team, which I now can't unsee. Doesn't mean it has to be Zubimendi that necessarily fits that profile, but what I do see is, we need a player who's a bit more of a connector. We need a player who's a little bit more empathetic with the other players in the team and understands his role is to hook those things up, is to pick out X, Y, and Z pass, is to not be Rodri or Busquets or any of these guys, but is to be his own version of those players within the role that we need him to do. And it's pretty satisfying to know that Liverpool identify players all the time that they could be getting, and then if we don't get them, we just move on. Before, it would have been, well, there's only that one guy in the transfer market. But now, after profiling players last week, I think you can see there are a number of different players that fit the profile that Liverpool are looking for. Zubimendi feels very unique. He certainly demands a very high transfer fee, but that doesn't mean that he is the only transfer target for Liverpool. Apparently they're in for Koopmeiners. I doubt that, if I'm honest. I think he's probably on his way to Juve. I think it's probably being used to scare him, being used to scare Juve and a couple of other players into just to getting the deal done. But there are other players out there who will profile similarly to Zubimendi. Obviously, he's the top transfer target. Obviously, Liverpool see it is worth spending 51.5 million overall, or whatever it is, spread out over a couple of years to get this guy. And of course, that makes perfect sense if you are a Liverpool fan. Spending money is the received knowledge of, well, if we spend money, we get good, right? And the same goes for someone like Harvey Elliott. The same goes for, thank you, someone like Fabio Carvalho. Carvalho, of course, I would have loved to have seen him stick in the team. Of course, I would have loved to have seen how he evolved under Arne Slot. But at the same time, similar to the Jurgen Klopp era, if he wants to go and play first team football, if he wants to go somewhere else and get that football and get that experience, and Liverpool isn't necessarily the place he has his heart set on, then Brentford's a great fit for him. It'll mean he can go somewhere else, Liverpool can make some profit, Liverpool can make more than a little bit of profit on him. They only spent 7 million on him before, and they aren't spending wages on him. They aren't, looking at who else they can move on or around him in the team. He was very good in pre-season. I think it was a great audition for a transfer, but that's the point. Good coaches are going to be able to pick up a player and go, cool, he's good, but he's not what I need. They're going to be able to get him to play really well in the side, motivate him in that short period. Who knows what he was playing for, whether he was playing for a move or whether he was playing to get into the Liverpool side. We don't know. But the point with that is you cannot just continue to turn around, and I've seen it a lot in transfers. I did a transfer show on Sky the other day, and a lot of people said to me, oh, you don't represent the fan base. FSG out. We don't want... I understand that there are some frustrations with FSG. I understand there are frustrations with the ownership structure. We'd all love to be able to own a percentage of our club and tell them what we wanted them to do. But even then, we would have days where we felt, oh, well, they're not going for the player that I want them to go for. They're not spending the money in the way that I want them to spend that money. And the frustration would continue. Obviously, you would feel better about it. The story would tell yourself would be better about it. But ultimately, what we're doing is playing a mental game here of supporting a side. And when I look at FSG as ownership, when I look at them compared to other owners out there, when I look at them compared to other structures out there, I think better the devil, I don't think they're the devil, better the player you know. And that's not me saying, therefore we should never upgrade and never change. But Michael Edwards has had Real Madrid take a run at him, Chelsea take a run at him, Manchester United take a run at him, and this is the structure that he preferred. The same goes for Richie Hughes, the same goes for Slot, the same goes for a number of people out there. When you're dealing with narratives and ideas that you haven't dealt with before, we hadn't dealt with a manager of the caliber of Arne, a head coach with the manager and the caliber management of Arne Slot. We looked at Alonso, we looked at a number of different other sexy young managers, right? Who fit our idea of what a manager should be in the modern age, of the alluring idea of, we wanted it to be this. And the same goes for players. Of course, I was like, I want a different player to Zubimendi. I wanted one player from Benfica, I wanted one player from Porto, I wanted one player from Atalanta, I wanted one player. There were a number of different players that I wanted, sporting players. But ultimately, we can't just sit around and go, this is how I would play Football Manager. And if you don't play Football Manager the same as me, then somehow you must be getting it wrong. These guys have got much more insight than we do. They have much more, they've got a close relationship with all of these players. Who knows what Fabio Carvalho said? Of course, I'd be sad to lose him. Of course, he's a great young player. It doesn't mean that I then just go out there and just go, well, we must be wrong on this. We must be getting rid of him. £30 million almost is a very good amount of money to receive for Fabio Carvalho. We would have got that now. We probably would have got that in a year. We may have got 40 million for him in a year if he played for Liverpool for another season. But he's clearly been told he's surplus to requirements, and he's clearly been told you can move on. And he looks happy enough to do that. If Bobby Clark does the same, it's disappointing. Obviously, you'd always want to see a player come through, and you have this great potential idea. But if potential isn't realised, then move on. If you can't realise that potential when you want to, and if it's not a great fit, and emotionally you're not going to be invested in the club, of course he's going to be emotionally invested, that's not what I'm saying. But the point is, you have to act within windows, and Liverpool cannot sit on a 43-person squad, especially if they want to make money in the transfer window, all these kind of things. Slot has a very specific vision, and we're still learning some of that vision. We're still learning how to support. We're still learning, this is quite a rudimentary idea of what it is that Slot is trying to enact. He's only had a couple of days with a couple of these people. He's still trying to speak to some of these players. He'll be telling Nunez, giving him intensive notes after the game. Same with Cody Gakpo. The same with Wataru Endo. The same with Ben Doak. If Doak moves on, then there's a reason why. He's been told he's not going to be playing in that first team for 2, 3, 4 seasons. Maybe it's that he wanted to play a different style of football, or he doesn't fit the style of football that we want to play in this specific time. We'll look at other clubs that are in real mess right now. Slot has walked in and said, I picked up a very strong squad, and it's very difficult to improve on that. That, for me, is an endorsement of what is going on at Liverpool. The style of football that Liverpool played in pre-season was very satisfying to watch. It worked really well in terms of continuity between old manager and new manager, and you can see other managers and other coaches coming in, picking that up and running with it. The reason we didn't pick the sporting coach was because he said, I want control over the transfers in a way that you can't give to me. So we don't take him. These things are things that on a day-to-day basis wear away at clubs, which cause tensions, which cause questions, which cause issues, which ultimately are the 1% that Liverpool, and according to the Liverpool model, ultimately the 1% that Liverpool are trying to get that advantage of and build up the 1%, the 1%, the 1%, over time, that builds up to 10%, to 15%, to 20%. And these marginal gains that you can get from just having continuity ahead of what Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal now have continuity, Newcastle are searching for continuity, all these kind of things. Those things make a massive difference to all these clubs. And I think ultimately, in watching the preseason, in watching some of these young players leave or watching them either get offered new contracts, whatever it is, what we're now seeing is Liverpool have a very clear vision. It's not me saying never question it. I'm sure there are plenty of issues in the dressing room. I'm sure there are plenty of issues with people who want a new contract. Van Dijk saying we need to sign new players. Van Dijk hasn't yet signed a new contract. Trent hasn't yet signed a new contract. Salah hasn't yet signed a new contract. But we're going on hearing nothing and then assuming that must mean that Van Dijk must sign a new contract, or I think Trent personally should sign a new contract. It doesn't mean if Liverpool don't get him to sign a new contract that I then go, well, they must be wrong because my idea of this was better. The same goes for Salah. Of course, you want to get value from the transfer market, all these kind of things. Let me know in the comments below. We'll do a video later in the day talking a little bit about Liverpool's next moves, who we can sign, who looks better. I personally think there are a couple of people who made leaps and bounds in terms of their performances against Sevilla and against Las Palmas. I'd be interested in what your opinions are there. And yeah, this isn't one of those videos where I'm making a compelling case to keep one player or the other. But I think a week ago, a lot of people, including me, were thinking, well, do we get rid of Luis Diaz? Because there might be a better option out there, or we might want to play a different role. We then see him score 2 goals, 2 fairly simple goals. So should that therefore change my opinion? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Anyway, I hope you join the community. I'm thinking of starting membership for this channel. Would you be interested in membership on this channel? I'm already sending one of these old home shirts out to one of the fans on the channel. I have another old home shirt. If you would like it, let me know. I'll probably give it away to members just because I've got to incentivize them somehow. And I also have a signed Jude Bellingham card here. Do I give that away? Do I keep that? What do I do? Let me know in the comments below, guys, and I'll see you guys right here real soon. Check you later.